Hey everyone, welcome back to the iGaming experience. I'm your host, Sam Batty, coming to you as always from the beautiful Zebra Studios here in Podgorica, Montenegro. And today we are tackling one of the biggest questions in this industry, which is how do you actually market an iGaming brand? Okay, we've talked about how to launch a brand in episode 6, where I broke down white label versus turnkey solutions. And I also touched on this topic in a previous episode on how to build an iGaming brand from scratch. But once you've got a brand up and running, how do you get players? Right? Whether you're running a solo sports book, a casino, or both, like the biggest challenge you'll have and continue to have, assuming your tech works well, is getting players through the door and keeping them engaged, right? AKA retaining them. And if you've just come into the industry, you've probably already noticed the usual playbook doesn't always work here. So, in this episode, I'm going to break down what makes iGaming marketing different, which channels matter the most, and what's working right now. And as usual, I'll give you a little game of prediction and I'll make some guesses on where I see marketing in iGaming going over the next couple of years. So today we're going to focus mainly on two key areas, which are acquisition and retention. Those are the two big pillars. And just so you know, I'll actually be dedicating separate episodes to each one of those topics later on, where we can really get into the weeds and drill down. Let's get into it. So, first, why is marketing in iGaming even worth its own conversation? Well, I've got a few reasons. For starters, this industry is heavily regulated. Depending on the market you're in, there are words you can't use, there are images you can't show, there are claims you can't make, and then you've got platforms. Sometimes major platforms won't let you advertise at all. Like, for example, Google and Facebook, you might have heard of them. Well, both of them have strict policies around gambling ads, and in some markets, they just fully blank you. You're also competing against brands with huge budgets, emphasis on the huge, right? So established operators in mature markets can spend millions per month on acquisition campaigns alone. So pick your battles. And unlike e-commerce where your customer might buy once and then never come back, in iGaming, your success here really depends on lifetime value, which is often referred to as LTV in iGaming. So that's how much you can earn from a player over weeks, months, and years lifetime. So your marketing has to do two things really well. Number one, you have to acquire players efficiently. That's acquisition. And number two, to keep them engaged for as long as possible. That's retention. So let's start with acquisition, right? Because there's no retention without acquisition. So this is all about bringing new players to your platform, which, by the way, is much harder than it sounds. Here are the main channels in iGaming today that you're going to utilize for your acquisition. Number one, by far the most important, is affiliates. All right, this is still the single most important channel in many, if not every single market. All right, affiliates, if you don't know, are basically professional marketers who send players to you. This isn't unique to iGaming. There's affiliates for all types of industries. And in iGaming, you pay them either a share of the revenue from the player, their GGR. Go back to episode 1 or 2 if you don't know what I'm talking about. Gross gaming revenue. Sorry, I'll just throw it out there. But go back and give that a listen if you don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to GGR. This is key. You shouldn't be on this episode if you don't know what GGR means. And in fact, that leads me to another acronym here. So You pay your affiliates a share of the revenue or a CPA. Anyone? Anyone? No? That's cost per acquisition. CPA, cost per acquisition. So, and then sometimes you've got affiliates that are getting on a hybrid deal, which is a mix of the two. And quite frankly, that's what most good affiliates will ask for. So they get paid when a new player is acquired, a little flat rate, and they get a piece of their action lifetime. And no, that doesn't typically expire, right? As I said, that's a lifetime deal. As long as that player is playing on your site, their affiliate will be getting a cut of their GGR. Pretty sweet deal, right? So why are you paying affiliates so much? Well, as I said, in pretty much all markets, they are the number one driver of traffic. And there's a reason for that too. They're pretty clever, right? Affiliates touch on all marketing areas pretty much to drive traffic, right? They handle SEO, they handle content, they review sites, they leverage social media, right? This is all to drive new players to your brand. Um, but also, I mean, it's worth noting affiliates are very picky, as they should be. They care about your conversion rates, right? They care about your retention. They care about your payment reliability. So if your platform isn't performing and players are leaving, they're not staying there for a long time, then affiliates will quickly move their traffic elsewhere to capture a higher LTV, right? A higher lifetime value, which makes perfect sense to me. Imagine it makes sense to you as well. All right, so let's talk about the next technique here, which is SEO and content. I just mentioned it a minute ago. So, SEO, I'm going to define it in a second, but just want to note that it's starting to become a somewhat dated term thanks to AI. Okay, and in fact, that might not mean anything if I don't explain what it is. So, SEO stands for search engine optimization. Basically, like how easy is it for search engines like Google to find your content, and how likely are they to push it to the top of the search results, right? And that's not a short game, that's a long game. You start to plug this stuff in through various techniques to educate these search engines that you have this content out there for them to find, and that takes a while to build up. You're not the only one doing it. Okay, so you got players that are constantly searching for things like best casino bonus, or how to bet on tennis, or how do sports odds work, and you want to appear at the top of those searches, right? It's just credibility that's driving people to your brand and brand awareness and all these good things with marketing, right? And that's actually it's with SEO, it's often coupled with other content marketing techniques. So it rarely will just sit on its own as adding some keywords to your website. You're also going to be creating blogs or guides or doing reviews of similar products. All of these things help to build credibility, and they help to feed that mystical Google algorithm where they're taking in all these different bits and somehow factoring and putting in order where these search results should land. Now, staying on top of this algorithm is often the biggest challenge for marketers, not just in iGaming, but in any type of digital marketing. Google will give you hints, but they never really spell out exactly, how the formula is created here. So you just need to roll with it, adapt with it. It's constantly adapting, and you just need to be able to adapt with it, right? Okay, so next channel I'll talk about. We've just talked about a couple of inexpensive slash free things, but now I want to talk a little bit about paid media, and I'm just going to talk about it a little, and you'll see why. If your market allows it, paid media on like Google and Facebook, Instagram, uh, other programmatic type of advertising on these major platforms, it can work, but it's expensive. Remember when I paused before on the huge budgets that some of your competitors will have? Well, when it comes to paid media, They're going to kind of own the space with that large budget. And on top of that, you also need to know the compliance rules inside and out. Okay, so like even like a display ad on a niche site can bring in players at a decent cost if you're targeting well. But as I mentioned at the start, you're up against some giants with massive teams and budgets to match. In many cases, in fact, I'd say in most cases, paid media needs to be extremely targeted. What I mean by that is the marketer needs to have a super tight understanding of the customer and the market that they're targeting. Once that's understood, you can look for some marketing areas where there is some low hanging fruit, as in niches within marketing platforms that aren't too saturated. In fact, that's what led to the big rise in the next marketing channel I'm going to speak about: influencers and or streamers. Kind of the same thing, but I guess streamers are a bit of a subset of influencers. So this group, instead of traditional ads, which many players and just human beings tend to tune out, these influencers and streamers, these creators, are bringing gambling content to life in a way that feels personal and entertaining. And not unique to iGaming. You know, like I should say this as a caveat for almost every point I make here is a lot of this will cross over to different industries. But within iGaming, you're on platforms like Twitch, Kick specifically, YouTube, TikTok. You'll find streamers that are broadcasting their own betting sessions, right? So they're just placing spins on slots live. You know, they're breaking down their sports bets as they're making them. They're teaching viewers about odds and strategies, or they might just be doing something completely random. They might not even be talking about gambling. Far be it for me to say who's necessarily going to pop or what their audience loves, but there's all types of streamers and influencers. But typically, the one thing that they share is that they will be interacting with an online casino or sports book during their stream and during their any of their posts. And in fact, going back to Kick, some of you might not have even heard of Kick. Um, but I believe Kick was created by Stake.com. I should have looked this up. But I'm pretty sure that Stake.com created them to combat some of the issues with around regulation, which we were talking about earlier, where Twitch was taking some of these streamers off of their platform, and that was a major shakeup in our industry. For some other industries, no big deal, but for us, it was kind of a big deal. So I believe that Stake took that on to specifically make this for iGaming streamers. And these influencers and streamers, what happens with them is they build super loyal audiences who trust them, and then you know how it is when they recommend a brand or show off a particular platform, it comes across more like a recommendation from a friend rather than a hard or even a soft sell, right? They're not even being sold. They're just getting a recommendation. Here's something that you'll like. Who doesn't like that from someone that you trust, right? And then, so that's on the player side, there's the appeal. But for operators, the appeal is also, I think, kind of obvious. Influencers can reach these highly engaged, very niche communities that you'd struggle to reach through standard channels, if you can reach them through standard channels at all. That's kind of what makes them niche, is that they're outside of some of these mainstream networks. Now, these streamers and influencers, they also make gambling look and feel social, right? I mentioned that a little bit earlier, but that's something that resonates massively, especially with younger players, at least the data that I'm seeing. Because these players, they value interaction, they value authenticity. These days, it's less about the production value and more about keeping it real, right? And I would say, as regulations continue to tighten around traditional ads, and as audiences get a little bit wiser and a little more skeptical of banners and pop-ups, you're going to see an even bigger pop in influencers and streamers who are already a massive part of the marketing mix in iGaming. Just full stop. Brands that figure out how to work with streamers and influencers thoughtfully, right? Providing them with fair deals, giving them guidelines, and giving them creative freedom are going to see great results. And many are already seeing fantastic results. So that's why I've actually just gone on for a long time now about that specific marketing channel. And lastly, right, this is the last channel I'll talk about here, is just local activations, right? This can be really overlooked, but you've got to start somewhere. And sponsoring a local sports team, right? Putting up signage in stadiums, partnering with community events, like these things can work surprisingly well, right? Especially when you're trying to establish trust in a new market. And in iGaming, trust is one of the biggest hurdles that you're going to have to get over. So the more that people can reach out and touch and see you, especially if you're a digital product, man, that can go a really long way. And that's also where the value comes of having someone local to work with, someone that really understands the market that you're going after and the player that you're going after. Right. Now, here's the key though, and this is a point that I probably should have made right at the start, is none of these techniques, none of these channels are going to matter if your platform isn't delivering a good experience. Right? If your site is slow, if your sign up process is clunky, if your bonuses are not competitive, you might hang on to a couple of new players, but the savvy ones, the valuable ones, they're gone. So just keep that in mind. All right. So you've acquired players, right, using those channels. Now what? Right? Now we're going to talk retention. Retention is where most operators either make money or they bleed out. For real. I know that's putting that a little bit starkly, but that's the reality of this industry, right? Acquisition costs are high in iGaming. So depending on the market, it can be hundreds of dollars or euros to get just one new player. Sometimes you don't even break even on a player until their second or third or, I don't know, 4 or 5 or 6 deposits. So keeping them engaged is critical. So I'll give you a few of the retention strategies I've seen that actually work, right? And none of this is rocket science. It just helps to have it laid out, I think. So number one, I've gone on this in pretty much every episode, and when it came to AI or anything to do with your site and your UI and your UX, is personalization. Right? Players don't want to feel like just another number, especially when it comes to winning and losing money. Right? So if just pay attention. If your player only bet on basketball, maybe don't spam them with tennis offers. Right? Just use their data responsibly. Don't be invasive. Use their data responsibly, but use it to personalize their experience, to recommend relevant bets, give them, bonuses more relevant to them, content more relevant to them. And in fact, that leads me to the next tool here is in retention is bonuses and promotions, right? This is, I think, probably the most obvious one. Whenever you go to a site, an iGaming site, you're going to see plenty of bonuses front and center. And there's a reason for that, right? Players come there expecting to see it. They want some type of deal. And, this is a little bit of an aside, but there's nothing worse than when you're going to go check out on, say, an e-commerce platform and you're just about to buy it. And then there's a little slot for a discount code. And you're like, well, where's my discount code? Right. So I think, with it, it's not just something that's a nice little extra tool. This is a staple of all iGaming sites, is to have decent bonuses and promotions. And then you can look at this as a great opportunity, a fantastic opportunity to get creative, right? You've got welcome bonuses, you've got reloads, cashback, free spins. Okay, sure. We know about those. But then also think about tournaments, think about leaderboards, think about VIP programs, spinning wheels, daily opportunities to win, right? One of my favorites is on BC Game, where they have a character. I forget what the character is now, but they have a character that randomly shows up on screen for just a few seconds. And if you click on it, you win a small prize, like a tiny little prize. But wow, is it satisfying when you get that little character, right? I've never had so much fun winning a few cents in my entire life. I get hyped. I get hyped every time. So, think outside the box when it comes to some of these tools. All right, loyalty programs. This is where you reward your best players, right? So it's not just with bonuses, but it's also with recognition, right? And I think that's where we should be thinking about it here. That's the big differentiator. Is this is a player being recognized for for spending time and their patronage on your platform, right? So that can come back in the form of like odds boosts, better cash back, faster withdrawals, dedicated support. These perks, other perks, they all build loyalty. And if they're done right, and the program is gamified in a way where the player can't wait to hit the next milestone, then this stuff is money in the bank. And I'm one of these guys. Like, you get me on a VIP program, and the next milestones are fairly tangible. Like, it's not going to take me weeks to get to the next level. It's just going to take me hours, maybe a few days. I'm in. I am in. All right. And so we're talking about enticing the players. That's one. But something I really should touch on, and now that I'm saying it, I feel bad because I probably should have said this at the very start. There needs to be a focus on responsible gaming as well, which isn't the most fun topic in iGaming. However, and you may be saying, Sam, like, I don't really see how responsible gaming and marketing necessarily go together. But when we're talking about retention, right? I would say the number one factor in retaining a player is that player's ability to be able to play on your site, for them to be able to actually afford it, right? So with responsible gaming, right, helping players stay in control of their own behavior, right, setting deposit limits, offering them cooling off periods, just being proactive about this stuff, it not only protects the player, right, but it builds trust, and it keeps the players coming back in a healthy way. It's impossible to underscore actually how important it actually is that, ethically and from your own bottom line, this makes sense, right? The more players that you have, the longer that they can play with you, the higher their lifetime value is going to be. It makes no sense for you to try and squeeze out every dollar from them as soon as possible. And also, ethically, like, this is entertainment here. We're here setting up a tool for people to have fun. Yes, sometimes you win money, sometimes you lose money, but the idea is being responsible. Right? Fun times. All right, and so last point I'm going to make on this is just keep testing as well, right? Use data to understand why your players are leaving and what keeps them coming back. Right? Retention is not like set it and forget it and we're good to go. This is ongoing. You want to constantly be assessing your product. You want to be assessing your players, and you just want to see what are the triggers that are getting people to come and go, and then really trying to capitalize on that. Right? Okay, so let's move on to the last segment here. Where is this all headed? Right? What is the future of marketing in iGaming? So I see three trends shaping the next few years. Right, and one of them I've already touched on a little bit, and I will probably touch on this in every episode because with AI, this has just become even more to the forefront. Number one is hyper personalization. Right, so we're going to have AI driven personalization, which is going to go way beyond just recommended bets. Right, we're talking fully customized experiences, dynamic homepages, tailored promotions, like even like unique odds based on player profiles. Right, really drilling down and making this granular. Right, eventually a player is going to open their favorite sports book or casino, and everything they want to see will be right in front of them, whether they knew it or not. That's coming. Second thing I want to talk about here is gamification. Right, this is a bit of a buzzword in the industry right now, and for good reason. Right, we just expect to see much more of it in the way of like loyalty missions, of badges, streaks, social competitions baked directly into the marketing itself, right? And this is not just in casino. This is increasingly happening on the sportsbook side as well. Like traditionally, gamification has been more of a casino side play, right, with the tournaments and the leaderboards. But now we're seeing the same ideas cross over into sports betting, right? Sports books are starting to offer daily, weekly missions uh, like place 5 live bets this week and unlock a $10 free bet, something like that. Players can earn badges for milestones, right? You remember, maybe this is a North American thing, but you remember swim class, earning your badges? That certainly kept me in the game for a while. We like our badges, right? So, players, maybe they can earn a badge for hitting certain milestones, like betting on every NBA team in a season, or winning their first micro bet, something like that. And then streaks, right? I can't go on enough about streaks. Again, outside of iGaming, inside of iGaming, it's massive. Just like rewarding players for taking actions on consecutive days or weeks. It's just a great way to build habits and boost retention. I've got habit trackers on multiple different project management tools and tools that I use to try and maximize myself as a human being. But it just applies all over the place. So anytime that you're looking to build a habit of any kind, whether it's with yourself or with someone else, look at a way to introduce streaks and tracking, because most of us human beings, once we see a streak of 4 or 5 or 6 in a row, we do not want to break it. Okay, ask Duolingo how that went for them. Now the social element as well, outside of the streaks, right, or not just outside, it can actually be combined with it, and it often is. Snapchat does this pretty well. The social element is really growing as well. So you've got like leaderboards that are showing how players rank against each other. Okay, so that's not new, but now we're looking at like allowing them to compete in shared challenges with just friends or their own little closed community, right? So it turns just simple transactional betting into a fun social experience, right? Something that you're all doing together, something that regular users of iGaming platforms and people maybe that have never used an iGaming platform before, there's new tools being built now where these players can use these things together, and it's something that players want to come back to, not just for the betting, but also to unlock rewards and to beat their own personal best or their best friend's personal best, and just compete socially with their group or other like-minded individuals, right? And to add to that, right, within social and community, that's I mentioned it in as a marketing channel, and that's going to be the next big wave, right? It's going to look a lot more like entertainment than it is an advertisement, right? You're going to see more social features like in chat rooms. You're going to see shared bets. You're going to see community leaderboards, just a lot more ability to communicate and interact with the platform and your fellow players, right? Just blending content and community and gambling like into one experience. Pretty cool. And all right, so that's end of my notes. That's your crash course on marketing and iGaming. We've covered why this industry is different, which channels actually work, how to think about acquisition and retention. And as usual, I gave you some thoughts on where it's all going. So, like I said earlier, we're just scratching the surface today. I'll be dedicating full episodes in the future to acquisition strategies and retention strategies on their own, because both of them deserve a much deeper dive. Now, in the meantime, if you're running a brand or thinking about launching one, just remember this. No matter how good your marketing is, if the product experience isn't there, you're wasting your money. Get your product right for the market you are targeting. Simple as that. All right, thank you. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone who's new to the industry or interested in iGaming marketing or both. You're always welcome to ping me to discuss this episode or any episodes from this show. You can get me at sam@zebrasolutions.me. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I'm Sam Batty, coming to you from the Zebra Studios in Podgorica, Montenegro. And this was the iGaming Experience. See you next time.